From the New Arts and Media Studios in Milwaukee, I'm Charles Purcell. On a day every year that I just feel so uncomfortable, on Veterans Day, November 11th, the 11th hour of the 11th day of the 11th month. Of course, it originated as a commemoration of the end of World War I, the war to end all wars. In 1926, Congress established November 11th as Armistice Day to commemorate with thanksgiving and prayer and exercises designed to perpetuate peace through goodwill and mutual understanding between nations. President Coolidge issued a proclamation inviting the people of the United States to observe the day in schools and churches or other places with appropriate ceremonies expressive of our gratitude for peace and our desire for the continuance of friendly relations with all other peoples. And the reason I feel so sad on this day every year is that Armistice Day is long gone, and now it's Veterans Day. Now let me be very deliberate and very careful. I'm not going to bash the military. I recognize the need for a military, for defense. I recognize that. I also never second guess anybody who joins the military. I just assume the best of everyone. You're doing it for the right reasons. So I'm not going to bash the military. I'm not going to bash anybody who joins it. But everything about the military, about the history of the way the United States has used the military, we're the biggest war-mongering state in human history. We are the largest provider of military weapons. We sell more weapons to the world, exponentially more than any other nation. We devote half of our nation's resources, i.e. money, to military expenditures. I don't have to repeat Eisenhower's warning of the military-industrial complex. The reasons this country goes to war, wars of profit, wars based on lies, invasions, occupations. They tell me World War II was a just war. Everything I've read about World War II gives me no reason to question that. Defending the world against a very dangerous power represented by the Third Reich. I'm not a history expert. My simple reading of it is, okay, yeah, good job. Thank you. But every war since then? I mean, come on, count them down. Korea, Vietnam, the Gulf War, Iraq, Afghanistan? None of them justified. Millions of lives lost, trillions of dollars spent, to the benefit of exactly no one, except that is, of course, for the aforementioned military-industrial complex. So the fact that America decided to just toss out a national holiday calling for peace and friendly relations with all other peoples, and instead to replace it with Veterans Day, and once again celebrate this obscenely misguided institution, if not evil, entity of the U.S. military. Once again, let me repeat, I'm not talking about the military itself, especially the people, the soldiers, the officers. You're doing what you need to do. You enlisted because you thought it was the right thing to do. I'm going to give you every benefit of the doubt. I'm not talking about you guys right now. In fact, I'll take it a step further. There's no bigger defender of the military as it regards the safety, health, and well-being of those who serve. I am the first in line. Talk about the budget. Talk about allocating resources. Every possible dime should be going to those who served to make sure they're as safe as they can possibly be while they're serving, that their families are taken care of. They don't have to rely on food stamps. They should be well compensated and well cared for. Every last one of them should have universal health care for the rest of their lives without having to somehow prove anything about their health needs, whether they are victims of Agent Orange or PTSD or respiratory disease because of toxic fires in the Gulf. So many veterans have to fight for their benefits. So many veterans die of suicide. They struggle. Their families struggle. Yeah, put me at the very head of the line, calling for the most comprehensive and vigorous support of those who serve. Absolutely. I'm there. But the institution of the military, and especially the way it's been used in the hands of presidents and corporations over the decades and centuries, not having any of that. So today, Armistice Day, no more. No, we don't want to have a day to call for peace and to celebrate goodwill. We want to hand that over. And Veterans Day, it's such a misnomer. Veterans are used by so many people as kind of a proxy, as an avatar, to represent everything about the military that I abhor. Veterans Day is just another excuse for jingoists to display their wares, to glorify war, to fetishize war and the military. You'll see featured on your streaming services, there'll be all sorts of war movies. Classic war movies, contemporary ones, especially classic war movies, John Wayne, Glenn Ford, glorifying war. It's sickening. It's disgusting. I'm all for protecting and honoring and especially caring for veterans. But this day, there are plenty of ways to honor veterans without waving war banners and flags, without engaging in this uniquely American mythology. When this day rolls around, I turn off all of my media. I don't want it in my face. I turn it all off today. Find other things to do. And to have a day of commemoration, we have Memorial Day, we have Flag Day, we have Armed Services Day. They've got a half a dozen other days of commemoration. And you know, I have a lot of the same feelings about Memorial Day. It's perfectly legitimate to honor fallen soldiers for all the reasons I've already talked about. But that's also turned into just a horrible display of jingoism and military fetishism and warmongering and war glorifying. That's another one that's morphed over the years. It was originally called Decoration Day. It didn't officially become a federal holiday until 1971, and by then it was already so bastardized. A lot of people argue about the origins of Memorial Day, and from the reading I've done, there's good reason for the disagreements because it kind of popped up in a lot of places. It was all over the country in different cities, different states, and over the many, many years, decades, even how long? Well, between the end of the Civil War in 1971, different states, different cities had official commemorations. But in the very beginning, it was Decoration Day and got the name because they decorated the graves of soldiers. It was a very sort of specific thing. Some will tell you, many people will tell you, that the first commemoration was in South Carolina, Charleston, and it was initiated by formerly enslaved people. Now, I'm not going to be the final judge of who's right on this, but I do know for a fact that there were many commemorations, many holidays declared in many regions. And if that's the first, then okay. I can't confirm that. Many will say it's well established. Okay, I'll take you at your word. But then, of course, as America would do, In 1966, the federal government declared Waterloo, New York, the official birthplace of Memorial Day. I'm not sure how they got to that, how they got from Charleston to Waterloo, but that's a sidelight. Back to Armistice Day. Congress passed a resolution in 1926 for an annual observance of Armistice Day, and November 11th became a national holiday beginning in 1938, as I said, commemorating the 11th hour of the 11th day of the 11th month of 1918, signaled the end of World War I. But then in 1954, wouldn't you know it, man, the mid-50s were weird. President Dwight D. Eisenhower, the aforementioned, officially changed the name of the holiday from Armistice Day to Veterans Day. And I'm not sure, I wasn't around, but I'm sure now, I can tell you what Veterans Day is like now. It has absolutely nothing to do with celebrating peace and calling on friendly relations. So 1954, Veterans Day. As I said, those mid-50s, man. Not surprising that that's the date. We're in the middle of McCarthyism. We're back at war, because after the war to end all wars and the first Armistice Day, well, shortly after that, World War II was happening, and right on the heels of that was North Korea. So now we're in North Korea. It's the mid-50s. McCarthy is having his heyday. The Red Scare is all about us. This renewed sense, well, I shouldn't even say renewed. It was kind of, I'm no historian, but this seems like a unique moment in American history when that sort of red-blooded, jingoistic, iconoclastic model of love it or leave it patriotism was really taking bloom and soon to be in full flower. It's a very, very ugly side of our national character that has only grown since then. But the mid-50s was such fertile soil for this kind of garbage. In God We Trust was officially declared as the national motto, replacing E pluribus unum, from many, one. A beautiful idea about the very definition of the United States of America. For all of the Founding Fathers' flaws, and we all know what they were, that was a beautiful idea. Set aside for a moment the fact that it required first an invasion and then an attempted genocide of the natives who were already here. I know, not easy to set aside. But for the sake of this conversation, the beautiful idea was that, of course, none of us, people who came from across the Atlantic, are natives of this land. Our nation is defined by the people who come and join us. A nation of immigrants, out of many, one. So regardless of the origins of this country, and regardless of where we come, just standing alone as an idea, it's beautiful. And they tossed it. The powers that be decided just to toss it right in the trash, just like they tossed Armistice Day. Celebrate peace and goodwill among peoples? Why would we do that? Oh, we better carve this right in stone, better put it right on the pillars of our national institutional buildings. So now it's in God we trust. We are white Christians. In God we trust. It was, what is a clearer affirmation, declaration from high above, from the White House, from the Capitol building, making it official, telling Americans this is who you are. Damn it, you're a white Christian. You are the real Americans. As vice presidential candidate Sarah Palin would infamously say 50-some years later. So that was 1956. 2 years before that, the Pledge of Allegiance wasn't even good enough for them. They had to slip in under God for the same reasons. Because we're America. Can't give those godless commies an inch. Let them slip in here. McCarthy, good old Joe McCarthy's warned us about that. So in 1954, they slip under God into the Pledge of Allegiance. Little history on that. Written in 1892 by a guy named, looking at my notes here. Oh yeah, Francis Bellamy, who was a Baptist minister. But not only that, he was a Christian socialist. For all of you fans of the Pledge of Allegiance out there, it was written by a socialist. I love history. In Texas, I could be arrested for telling you this. And if a teacher tells you in a public school, take them out and string them up. Yeah, Francis Bellamy was a Christian socialist. He wrote the Pledge of Allegiance. It was originally published in the Youth's Companion. I guess that's some sort of a periodical. September 8th, 1892. Bellamy had hoped, let me give credit here, I think this is history.com. Yeah. Bellamy had hoped that the pledge would be used by citizens in any country. Yeah, that was his hope. Because he was a good old school socialist. And any socialist worth their salt is an internationalist as well. So it was his intent that this pledge could be used by people of all countries, not just America. But in 1954, in response to the drummed-up communist threat, I guess politicians have been drumming things up for a long time, like they drum up critical race theory now. They drummed up the communist threat for their own political ends. President Eisenhower encouraged Congress to add the words "under God," creating the 31-word pledge we say today. Bellamy's daughter objected at the time to this alteration. So I would really hope that we could somehow resurrect Armistice Day in a better world that I am always hopeful for. Maybe we could make that happen. This time of year, there are always a couple of stories, and I seek them out for my own comfort. There are always a couple of stories about resurrecting Armistice Day. Some local activists in Greenfield, Massachusetts, will be gathering this Saturday to recognize the 103rd anniversary since the end of World War I, and to join a nationwide effort to recognize November 11th as a day to advocate for the end of all war. Yeah, do I have to make my case any further? When you think of Veterans Day, do you immediately associate that with the wish to end all war? Yeah, I don't think so. No. Reading now from the Greenfield Recorder. The event, Stand Out for Peace, is part of an effort by the National Nonprofit Veterans for Peace to reclaim November 11, or Veterans Day, as Armistice Day, meaning a day to advocate for peace. Other events around the country, including in Syracuse, New York, where the Veterans for Peace Beyond War and Militarism Committee will hold an event. In a letter to the editor of Syracuse.com, Ronald Van Nerstrand of Veterans for Peace writes, I recently received in the mail a flashy postcard titled Thanking Our Veterans, CNY Veterans Parade and Expo. Prominently displayed are photos of marching soldiers, military tanks, and youth saluting with, of course, a backdrop of the red, white, and blue. The postcard announces that there will be marching bands, including the West Point Drill Team, musical performances, the Fort Drum Rock Band. What I find so distressing about this unabashed exhibition of militarism is the extent to which the military-industrial complex and the weapons industry have so successfully captured our imagination. They have convinced us that war and militarism are necessary and glorious. They have accomplished this cultural shift by insisting that we celebrate Veterans Day rather than Armistice Day. You should know that there is an alternative. Over 100 years ago, the world celebrated peace as a universal principle. Armistice Day was born and was designated as a day to be dedicated to the cause of world peace and to be thereafter celebrated. And he goes on to describe the actions of Congress in 1954, as you and I have already talked about here. And then he calls to the editor's attention an alternative event that his organization is sponsoring, to be held on Thursday, today, Veterans Day, where the mayor will join them and issue a proclamation declaring the 11th day of November 2021 to be Armistice Day for peace in the city of Syracuse. We will remember the millions killed, wounded, widowed, imprisoned, orphaned, and displaced by war. In our continual effort to reclaim Armistice Day, we will honor military resistors. Yeah, when you think Veterans Day, do you think about Veterans for Peace? Do you think about war resistors? No. We will gather in this solemn manner not to pay homage to the weapons of destruction, but to renew our commitment to work for an end to all wars and to foster justice and peace at home and abroad. Ronald L. Van Nostrand, Veterans for Peace. The writer is a Vietnam-era veteran. So I'm heartened by these efforts, and I'm saddened, heartsick about the dominant culture that dominates this day, and the complete and total buy-in of the dominant culture. All the media you're going to see today, every network, every streaming service, every minute of the national news media, pop culture, it's all going to be about the glorious fighting soldiers, the glorious fighting warriors, justifying every war from pre-revolutionary times right up to today. No such thing as a bad war. Every war is a glorious war, because if not, then how can our fallen soldiers be heroes? In order for us to call them heroes, well, then their cause must have been just. How can a hero fight and die for an unjust war? It's incongruous. It's unacceptable. So by waving the flags and rolling the tanks and flying the jet fighters over National Football League stadiums, what other message could that possibly be sending? And as I let you go here at the end, I just want to repeat again, as I said earlier, I don't have one single bad thing to say about somebody who served. You did it for your reasons, and I do not question them. And I do honor your service. And when it's time for me to walk into the voting booth, one of the issues I'm voting on, I expect the person who gets my vote to be a strong and uncompromising advocate for the safety and well-being of active military, former military, and their families. There's no bigger supporter, I promise you. But the ethos, the mythology, the circus, the theater of war, that's what's being celebrated on Veterans Day, at the expense of commemorating peace and the solemn promise and hope for peace among all people from this day forward, lost when Armistice Day was tossed aside. Talk about a defining moment in American history, because these things matter. They get into our heads, they get into our psyches, they define who we are. All right. Happy Armistice Day. I love you. I'm Charles Purcell.
What kind of a peace do I mean, and what kind of a peace do we seek? Not a Pax Americana, enforced on the world by American weapons of war. Not the peace of the grave or the security of the slave. I am talking about genuine peace, the kind of peace that makes life on earth worth living, the kind that enables men and nations to grow and to hope and build a better life for their children. Not merely peace for Americans, but peace for all men and women. Not merely peace in our time, but peace in all time. I speak of peace because of the new face of war. Total war makes no sense in an age where great powers can maintain large and relatively invulnerable nuclear forces and refuse to surrender without resort to those forces. It makes no sense in an age where a single nuclear weapon contains almost 10 times the explosive force delivered by all the Allied air forces in the Second World War. It makes no sense in an age when the deadly poisons produced by a nuclear exchange would be carried by wind and water and soil and seed to the far corners of the globe and to generations yet unborn. I speak of peace, therefore, as the necessary, rational end of rational men. I realize the pursuit of peace is not as dramatic as the pursuit of war, and frequently the words of the pursuers fall on deaf ears, but we have no more urgent task. Every thoughtful citizen who despairs of war and wishes to bring peace should begin by looking inward, by examining his own attitude. First, examine our attitude towards peace itself. Too many of us think it is impossible. Too many think it is unreal. But that is a dangerous, defeatist belief. It leads to the conclusion that war is inevitable, that mankind is doomed, that we are gripped by forces we cannot control. We need not accept that view. Our problems are man-made. Therefore, they can be solved by man, and man can be as big as he wants. No problem of human destiny is beyond human beings. Man's reason and spirit have often solved the seemingly unsolvable, and we believe they can do it again.